Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Wildboro podcast. I'm coming to you from the San Bernardino National Forest in Southern California, where I'm just kind of hanging out. I've been on kind of an adventure since I finished the Colorado Trail, and really I've been focusing on trying to get this farming project together. I mentioned how I want to buy land and try to grow as much of my own food as possible. And putting that into practice has been a journey. It's easy to have these ideas in your head, and then making them a reality is where the hard part comes in. So I have been volunteering on some organic farms in California and a couple off-grid homesteads, and met some nice people, but didn't really want to stay at any of them long term. So at the moment, I'm looking into buying land in Cochise County, Arizona, which has this law where if you own more than 4 acres of land, you can opt out of getting a building permit. So that takes the building process cost way down, and it makes it possible to build some alternative structures that would be hard to get a permit for normally. And so that's basically what I am doing next. Is I'm taking a building workshop, how to build what's called super adobe building, which is basically filling up sandbags with dirt. At its most basic level. There's a little bit more to it than that, I guess, but you basically can build these igloo kind of structures, or domes usually, with these sandbags, and they're very strong, and they're just using the soil that's on your land, so it brings the material cost like way down. You can build a tiny house for, just the raw materials, or like $10,000 or less probably. So that's kind of the update. I want to keep you all posted on my progress on this, because I've talked to a lot of you throughout the past year and had some really interesting conversations. And this is something that's important to me, to live a lifestyle where I feel like I can be happy. And I think it's going to be a really special experience to be able to share that with everyone. So this is probably going to take several months to get to make a reality. So in the meantime, I found this great book that's called The One Straw Revolution, which is by this Japanese farmer, Masanobu Fukuoka. And I heard about it through reading some books about permaculture. Thanks again to my friend Sam for telling me about permaculture, which is really like the study of sustainable living. So a lot of these permaculture people were speaking highly of this Japanese farmer. And I read his book, The One Straw Revolution, and I really liked it. He really expanded a lot on some of the things I was touching on. I just feel like I need to live close to nature to be happy. Through my backpacking experiences, I just feel really grounded and a lot more peaceful. There's a lot less noise and distractions when I'm just out in nature all the time. And so he really explored that. And basically everything he said, I really agreed with. And it also just pushed me to kind of question a lot of my assumptions about farming. He really took this thing down to the bare minimum amount of work possible. He called his method do nothing farming. And he was just very philosophical. His farming was all about this spiritual revelation he had. So I'm just going to get into this book. I recommend I think you would all find it interesting if you read it. So maybe you want to read it first and then listen to this. I am going to be quoting a lot from the book, so I guess I'm giving away part of the book. But so anyway, this guy, he was born in, I think the 1920s in Japan. And in his mid-20s, he had this like spiritual revelation. He almost died from pneumonia, and he was really troubled, and he was just kind of walking around all night, all the time. And he finally woke up, and this crane flew down and like screeched, and he woke up and had this revelation, which he says, that revelation completely changed my life. It is nothing you can really talk about, but it might be put something like this. Humanity knows nothing at all. There is no intrinsic value in anything, and every action is a futile, meaningless effort. And he also says, these words came out of his mouth, in this world there is nothing at all. I felt that I understood nothing. So he expands on this a lot throughout the book. What does that really mean? And I didn't really understand what he was talking about when I first read this. But he's basically talking about human knowledge. How meaningful is human knowledge really, I guess, in comparison to nature and just the beauty and the infinite complexity and elegance of nature. And human beings, we like to think that we are separate and somehow special than all the other animals and creatures and life forms on this planet. And he's basically challenging that idea. He's saying that we belong in nature just like any other animal, and every animal has its right place in the world. And human beings, at some point along the way, we started seeing ourselves as somehow separate, and we're living this lifestyle that is based on that separation instead of this unity and acceptance of our proper role in the world, which is to live like natural human beings very close to the earth. And he blames that separation, or that mindset of thinking that we are separate from nature, he blames that for a lot of the problems that we are facing in the world. So he had this revelation in the 1940s, and he immediately just quit his job. Everyone kind of thought he had gone insane, and he set out to prove that his theory was correct, which is that human knowledge is basically meaningless. And the way he set out to prove that was through this method of what he calls natural farming. So what he says is, I moved into a hut on the mountain and began to live a very simple, primitive life. I thought that if here, as a farmer of citrus and grain, I could actually demonstrate my realization, the world would recognize its truth. Instead of offering 100 explanations, would not practicing this philosophy be the best way? My method of do-nothing farming began with this thought, and that was in 1938. So he says, my conviction was that crops grow themselves and should not have to be grown. So he's basically challenging this whole method of farming where it's very labor intensive. I guess he specifically was growing rice in Japan. And so typically they would flood the fields with water to keep the weeds from growing and let the rice grow. And then that was like the conventional way for hundreds of years in Japan. But I guess the newer methods even were using pesticides and fertilizers, all these artificial things that had been thought up by scientists, again, people thinking that they are smart. And so he basically set out to prove that none of that was necessary, because like he says, crops grow themselves and should not have to be grown. So he's questioning every single thing that people are doing to grow plants, and taking it down to the bare minimum. And we'll get into the results that he had. So he says, I guess he's talking about like the fertilizers and the intensive weeding and the pesticides. He says, the reason that man's improved techniques seem to be necessary is that the natural balance has been so badly upset beforehand by those same techniques that the land has become dependent on them. This line of reasoning not only applies to agriculture, but to other aspects of human society as well. Doctors and medicine become necessary when people create a sickly environment. Formal schooling has no intrinsic value, but becomes necessary when humanity creates a condition in which one must become educated to get along. So, he's basically saying, you could look at it like, well, we have these pesticides and these fertilizers, these are helping the crops grow. But he's asking the question, well, why are the crops having a hard time growing in the first place? And he's basically blaming that on people are upsetting the natural balance of nature. So he expands on this idea. He says, to grow crops in an unplowed field may seem at first a regression to primitive agriculture, but over the years, this method has been shown in university laboratories and agriculture testing centers across the country to be the most simple, efficient, and up-to-date method of all. So he's basically saying we don't need to plow the earth to grow crops, which that's just typically how farmers do things these days. And he talks about upsetting the natural balance of things. I mean, if you look at nature, it's like, when are there entire fields that are just being plowed every single year? And think about all the plants that are growing and all of the quote unquote weeds that are growing and all of the insects and the spiders and everything that are living in there and all the roots that are going into the ground and creating a soil structure. That all gets destroyed when you plow up the ground. So now you're planting plants into an unnatural environment and they're not doing well. So people are like, well, we came up with these chemicals and if we apply them, it'll kill the bugs and that are eating the plants now. And if we apply this fertilizer, it'll make the soil healthy again. But the whole problem is tilling the ground in the first place. Again, getting away from nature is causing these problems. So he says, to the extent that people separate themselves from nature, they spin out further and further from the center. At the same time, a centripetal effect asserts itself and the desire to return to nature arises. But if people merely become caught up in reacting, moving to the left or to the right, depending on conditions, the result is only more activity. The non-moving point of origin, which lies outside the realm of relativity, is passed over unnoticed. I believe that even returning to nature and anti-pollution activities, no matter how commendable, are not moving toward a genuine solution if they are carried out solely in reaction to the overdevelopment of the present age. Nature does not change, although the way of viewing nature invariably changes from age to age. No matter the age, natural farming exists forever as the wellspring of agriculture. So I'm going to leave some of that quote for you to interpret. That's part of why I like this book, is a lot of the things made me think about what he's really talking about. And he does expand on some things throughout the book. But just that first part of that, to the extent that people separate themselves from nature, they spin out further and further from the center. If people are, he talks a lot about this, if we're only looking at the symptoms of problems, so like these crops are failing, and we say, well, if we apply this fertilizer, it'll fix the issue. We are still not getting back to the center, which is that we moved away from nature and we started plowing up the ground in the first place, thinking that human beings could improve on nature somehow. That's really the root of a lot of these problems. So, let's see. I made a lot of highlights while I was reading this, so I'm just going to kind of read through them all. So he says, the world has become so specialized that it has become impossible for people to grasp anything in its entirety. And again, talking about these crop issues, if your job is to develop a pesticide, then again, when do you ever have the chance to question, well, why do we need pesticides in the first place? If you're a scientist researching pesticides, and if you go to your boss and you say, hey, we don't even need pesticides if we just don't plow the ground, like, you're going to be out of a job and your whole department's going to be out of a job. So he had a lot of scientists visit his farm, and they would only be looking at one aspect of everything that he was doing. And they just kind of didn't get it. He basically just started farming without plowing the ground. He didn't plow his ground for over 20 or 30 years. I guess never, since he started doing this. And it took him like 30 years to finally perfect his system. And so he basically says the soil would just get healthier and healthier every single year. And again, it's kind of just people, we're letting our egos get in the way. So a scientist, like, if you're a scientist, maybe you attach some part of yourself and your self-image to being a scientist, and scientists are seen as smart and intelligent. So it's unlikely that you're ever going to say, hey, everything I'm doing is actually unnecessary if we just don't disturb nature. So I think that's what he's talking about, is when he says, like, in this life there's nothing at all. I mean, the human ego, we kind of need to get over that, and we need to accept that. I guess what he's arguing is that nature cannot be improved upon by human beings. We have to accept nature and work with nature, and we are part of nature. You know, we have to accept that role, and nature will provide for us if we work with it in a beautiful way. And I think life can be a lot more beautiful than it is now, and we do have a lot of problems, and I think they are all coming from this issue. We have tried to separate ourselves from our true home, which is the earth and nature. So he was very critical of this specialized way of thinking and these scientists who kind of were not taking a holistic look at the problem. And he says, I think an understanding of nature lies beyond the reach of human intelligence. And I personally agree with that. Just spending all the time that I have out backpacking and out in the mountains, like I have just gotten the sense that there's just something bigger out there that's our brains can never comprehend. I mean, just hiking, the John Muir Trail, for example, it's like 180 miles through the Sierra Mountains, and there's just so much beauty there. I could never explore that in one lifetime, and that's just a tiny slice of this planet and one activity that you can do on the planet. And there's more beauty out in the world than the human brain can ever comprehend and that we can individually experience. But this is what we're a part of. So I think accepting that, it gives human beings more worth, because we are a part of this beautiful thing, and we are all beautiful, amazing creations of nature. I mean, human beings are incredibly intelligent, and we can be very loving and caring and understanding and observing. And these are all the qualities that human beings can possess. And that all kind of disappears when we start seeing ourselves in opposition to nature somehow, and that we need to isolate ourselves from nature, which has found its way into our lifestyles a lot, unfortunately. So what was his farming method exactly? So he says, no cultivation, which means like tilling or digging up the ground, no chemical fertilizer or prepared compost, no weeding by tillage or herbicides, no dependence on chemicals. So his system was basically, in Japan, they have this cycle where they grow rice in the summer, and then they grow barley or rye, which are other grains, in the wintertime. And he would let the rice grow. He planted a cover crop, which I think was like a clover, which basically covers the ground and makes it hard for other plants to grow that might outcompete the rice. And then he would just let weeds grow. And the thinking there is that these weeds are all providing habitats for different animals. So there's a very healthy balance of insects and bugs in his fields. And these different plants are giving habitats to predators of certain insects that potentially would take over the rice fields. And so again, just working with the balance of nature instead of trying to fight that. And towards the end of the rice growing season, he would just scatter the seeds for the barley or rye. And then when he harvested the rice, he would just put the rice stalks back into the field as mulch. I guess that could also be called straw. So that's how he's calling this the one straw revolution. And he talks about all the different things that farmers used to do with the straw. Like they would just burn it because they thought that it could harbor diseases that would kill the rice the next year. And so his revolution was to just put that back in the field. And so he never had to weed at all. And then over the winter, they basically did a similar thing. And I guess the mulch would keep the ground cover down long enough to let the barley or rye get above that and get started. And then once it got to a certain height, the weeds and the ground cover, he would let that grow. And everything just grew naturally, and he never had to till his land. And he was producing as much rice per quarter acre. I think I have a quote by this. He was producing just as much rice as quote unquote conventional agriculture that was using pesticides and all these modern technologies. And he was doing it with just simple hand tools and a fraction of the work. And he's not harming the land. He was making the land healthier. So that kind of proved his theory correct to him and to me. And so that was his actual method of growing food, his natural way of farming. And I'm just going to keep reading through these highlights that I made. So later he says, when a decision is made to cope with symptoms of a problem, it is generally assumed that the corrective measures will solve the problem itself. They seldom do. So again, just taking fertilizer as an example, the symptom of the problem is the plants are not doing well. again, probably because the soil is being tilled every year, and basically that creates erosion, and the topsoil will wear away, or the ground just loses nutrients if you're not planting these crop cover. The clover he was growing was putting nitrogen back into the ground, which grains usually take nitrogen out of the soil. And letting all these weeds grow, they're constantly bringing new nutrients back into the ground. And when you're not letting that happen, the soil eventually gets depleted. And that's a symptom. We have depleted soils. And I guess the scientific solution is to apply these fertilizers that were thought of in a lab somewhere. And that's just treating the symptom. They're not treating the problem, which is that we were doing too much work in the first place. We have to let nature do its thing, kind of just get out of the way, which takes a lot of humility, I guess. But this is the mindset we need to get back to. We need to start seeing ourselves as part of nature and working with nature. It'll solve a lot of the problems that we're dealing with. He also says, so he started selling he grew oranges also, and he was selling his food for like a fraction of the price of other more conventional agriculture because his farming method was so inexpensive. So he says, I feel that natural food should be sold more cheaply than any other. If a high price is charged for natural food, it means that the merchant is taking excessive profits. If natural foods are expensive, they become luxury foods and only rich people are able to afford them. If you go to the grocery store, organic food is going to be more expensive. But the reality is that this natural way of farming uses way less inputs and labor. So it should be less expensive. He kind of gets into the economics of things, and he says the farmer would do much better by growing the food he needs without thinking about making money. And he talks about all of the waste that goes into selling food, and, markets will only accept like oranges, for example, that look perfect. And you might grow a natural orange that looks a little funny, but it's fine. And that's not going to sell. So this is also a big problem. Just we turn food into a commodity when really this food should be sustaining us. And so that's also just causing a lot of waste. And he's talking about how these farmers, to just keep up with the economics of everything, it kind of ruined their entire life, because he says that farmers, for New Year's, they used to take the entire month off. Like farmers used to have a lot of free time in Japan. And ever since they got into this conventional way of agriculture and dependent on fertilizers and stuff, and they're competing with other people, they're trying to grow stuff out of season because that fetches a higher price at the market. He says all of a sudden the New Year's holiday became like 2 or 3 days. So it's kind of just this race to the bottom. And we're turning something that could be beautiful, which is the cultivation of life and food, into a really competitive and stressful undertaking that is destroying the earth, and it's destroying the health of the people involved with that. He was also talking about how, so he came up with some simple device to plant seeds, and he went to an agricultural equipment manufacturer who said, if we make a gadget like that, the farmers might start thinking they didn't need the tractors we sell for thousands of dollars. And his device cost like $3. So again, he's just talking about the economics, and there is a financial incentive to keep this current system going because, these companies making these chemicals are making money. The companies making the tractors are making money. And he was just using simple hand tools, like I said, not doing a lot of work. And where's the profit in that? There is none. So, and it's like, who cares? If we're destroying if we are destroying the world to make this profit, then what's the point of that? And if we're able to accomplish the same thing with little effort, then why aren't we doing that? So these are all the things I want to try to put into practice with my farming idea, which is why I'm reading this. This is kind of like the philosophical underpinning of what I want to do. So later he says, no matter how hard people try, they cannot improve upon naturally grown fruits and vegetables. He's talking, this is when he was talking about growing stuff out of season, and he's just saying all the different things they have to do to make the fruits look okay, and they're losing all their nutritional value and flavor. And I'm sure we've all experienced that. Like if I go and buy tomatoes out of season at a supermarket, it may look like a tomato, but the texture is nothing close to it. It's not juicy or anything, and the taste is just nothing. It doesn't taste like anything. And this is what we're eating all the time, so it could be a lot better. So here's how productive his farm was. He says, so he was producing 1,300 pounds of rice per quarter acre. So he says if 1,300 pounds of rice and 22 bushels, which is also 1,300 pounds, 22 bushels of winter grain are harvested from a quarter acre field, the field will support 5 to 10 people each, investing an average of less than 1 hour of labor per day. So I thought that was a significant statement because, again, I've been talking a lot about how much we're working now, and everyone's just working all the time, 40 to 50 hours per week, and it's just kind of taking over our entire lives. And he's basically saying that he was able to produce enough food to support 5 to 10 people working less than 1 hour per day. So I think that that's a lot closer to the truth of how much we actually need to be working if we're just working to provide our basic physical necessities. And this is what we need to reclaim again. And he's telling us how we can do this, which is to live a lot closer to the earth. So again, this lifestyle I'm looking into, I'm not going to be building some big extravagant house. I mean, if I build this super adobe dome kind of a thing, it's going to be maybe a few hundred square feet at the most, but it's taking a house and it's making it what it should be, which is a shelter from the elements, and it's cutting out all this extra cost and expense, and these huge houses that we're living in is really harming us. I just read this article in the New York Times about how Americans are spending more time inside than ever before. And this is really affecting all of us, again, with this social connection and mental health stuff I've been talking about. If we live in just simple structures, we're a lot more likely to spend more time outside in nature, which is really our true home. And it makes us more sensitive to what a beautiful place this is, and we're not shutting ourselves off from that. And we're not shutting ourselves off from each other. If we're living a more simple lifestyle, we have less in the way getting in between us, spending time with each other. And we're not having to work all the time just to pay a mortgage, to pay for these houses that really, they're not really providing anything for us except just basic shelter from the elements. So we put a lot of our hopes and dreams into owning a house and thinking that's going to lead to a happy life. But the reality is that none of the things that actually can make you happy are going to be contained in a house. It's just a structure. And the things that can make you happy are having close relationships with the people in your life, having work that you feel like is meaningful every day, and having some sort of connection to this beautiful planet that we live on. And when we get into these houses with all these rooms and floors and everything, it's just shutting us off from a lot of that stuff. And then the work that we have to do to make money to pay for that is really killing us. So that's a tangent, but something I've been thinking a lot about recently, and I think it fits in with the message of this book. If we're willing to give up this complicated and fancy house and this sophisticated lifestyle, we can have a life where he's saying we can work on average less than 1 hour per day. But we have to change our lifestyle a lot to make this possible. And I just think the benefits in that are huge. Maybe we lose some creature comforts along the way. but we're going to gain all these other things that I just said that can actually make us happy. We will be outside and working with our hands and providing for ourselves and working with each other. So that's all the things I want in my life, and I'm trying to accomplish with my homesteading project. So, let's see what else he says here. So he found a lot of success with his farming method, with none of the modern methods that anybody else was using, and he went to some conference about farming, and he basically was met with a lot of skepticism. They kind of just shot down a lot of his ideas, and so everyone is very skeptical of him, again, because he's kind of making a lot of people look stupid who, by society standards, are smart. These sophisticated scientists coming up with these new farming methods, he's basically saying that they are all just wasting their time. And it is a big waste of time, and they are killing the earth with all this artificial stuff. So what I was just talking about, how we need to get back closer to the earth, he says, in my opinion, if 100% of the people were farming, it would be ideal. And he says that in Japan, after World War II, between 70 and 80% of people in Japan were farmers. That quickly went down to 50% and then 30 and 20. And in the 70s, when he wrote this book, he says the figure stands at around 14%. So it's really only recently in human history that people have not been farming the land. And I just think it's really connected with all these mental health problems that we're having. I mean, it's really a widespread problem. I think almost everybody is dealing with some sort of depression or anxiety, or just feeling lonely and isolated. I mean, I've felt a lot of that stuff, especially the loneliness and isolation and anxiety. I mean, it's way easier to relax when you're around people who you feel supported and loved by. And when you're living this agricultural lifestyle, you're just more likely to be around other people and working with other people, and it's just a way more human lifestyle. It's more natural. It's a more natural lifestyle for human beings. So this all just really happened recently, and I don't see any reason why we can't go back to this, and I think it would solve a lot of the problems that we're facing. Imagine if 50 or 60 or 70 or more percent of the population was producing their own food. You know, now we're not having to ship food all over the world, and think of all the fossil fuels that we're saving by doing that, and think of all the land that we're saving in California where most of this food is being grown. They are destroying the habitat. The habitat's been totally destroyed in California because of all the farming that's happening there. By pumping out all the groundwater in the Central Valley of California to grow food for most of the country, they have collapsed a lot of aquifers that can basically never be replaced again, at least by nature. And that's kind of decreasing our chances of survival on the earth. If we run out of groundwater, then, I mean, the earth just becomes uninhabitable. So by bringing everything back to a more localized level, we start to become less reliant on these mass systems that are not sustainable or healthy or natural at all. They're killing the earth, and this lifestyle is killing the earth, and I think it's killing all of us. I haven't talked to many people who are totally happy right now. Most people I talk to are not very happy right now, and I think it's because of this. We've become very separated from the natural lifestyle of a human being. And we can get back to that. I feel like I can get back to that, and that's what I'm working on right now. Could be happening in the near future. And I want to invite you all to experience this with me and see what we think about this whole idea of getting back to a simple agrarian lifestyle. So I think that would fix a lot of the climate problems we're having, a lot of the mental health problems we're having, a lot of the physical health problems we're having, because imagine just being outside working all the time, and also now we're just eating food that is actually nutritious. I mean, on some of this one farm I went to, I had blackberries, and I didn't even know that blackberries could taste like that. I mean, the flavor was nothing close to what I buy in the supermarket. It was so deep and rich flavor, and it was just delicious. Like, I couldn't stop eating these blackberries, and that's what all the food we should be eating should have that nutritional content and flavor, and And that's just not what we're getting now. We're getting this very plasticky version of food. So it's no surprise to me that we have all these chronic diseases going on. And it solves the social problem because now we're living more in community with people again, and we're getting away from this very isolated lifestyle that I don't think is really working for anyone or working for a lot of people. So I'm kind of just going on rants here, but I will keep moving through these highlights. So he says, for 100% of people to be farming, he says, I think this is the most direct path toward making this country a happy, pleasant land. And I agree with that. And again, that's what I'm doing with my life. So you don't have to go out and do this with your life, but I do hope you will come and visit me when I get this project started. And I want to put these ideas into a physical reality, like this farmer did. He had this revelation and he put it into physical reality to prove that was correct. And so I want to put all my ideas into a physical place where you can come and visit it and see what I'm talking about. And I think experience something different and some environment where we can actually feel happy again. Later he says, extravagance of desire is the fundamental cause which has led the world into its present predicament. And again, getting back to this idea of these houses, we want to be very secure and safe all the time. And we're basically destroying our lives to get that, which is never possible. It's never possible to be 100% secure. And again, we just have to accept our role in this world. You know, we're only here for a limited time, and to just focus on being comfortable, is that the true meaning of life? I don't think so. I mean, I think what he's saying is the meaning of life, or the purpose of life, is to appreciate what a beautiful world this is and what beautiful people we can be. And living a lifestyle that's in cohesion with that. We need to live a simpler lifestyle and get back to the basics, to let the earth be the foremost thing in our life instead of these constructions that human beings have created. That extravagance of desire, that's really causing a lot of the problems that we're dealing with right now. And, you know, I've just, again, through backpacking, living a very simple lifestyle for months at a time, I was physically less comfortable, but I was always just way happier doing that. And that's why I kept doing it over and over again, even though it is very difficult. The benefits definitely outweighed the drawbacks. He says, agriculture must change from large mechanical operations to small farms attached only to life itself. Material life and diet should be giving a simple place. If this is done, work becomes pleasant and spiritual breathing space becomes plentiful. So again, just accepting that, you know, life is good as it is, as nature has provided us. And once we try to improve on that, that's when the problems and the complication and the stress starts. He gets into a whole section about diet, which he talks a lot about having a seasonal diet. And his diet really changed a lot throughout the year, just based on what food was available. And so his diet had a lot of variety in it. Everything was always fresh and in peak season. And that is something else that would be a good change, I think. So yeah, just elevating the spiritual life over the physical material life, I think will solve a lot of our issues. He says, to be here, caring for a small field, in full possession of the freedom and plenitude of each day, every day. This must have been the original way of agriculture. So he really came to enjoy that lifestyle, and that's why I'm working on this project. I feel like it would be a very enjoyable lifestyle. A lot of your life is in your control. And again, you're working with nature, which is beautiful. He says, scientists, no matter how much they investigate nature, no matter how far they research, they only come to realize in the end how perfect and mysterious nature really is. To believe that by research and invention, humanity can create something better than nature is an illusion. I think that people are struggling for no other reason than to come to know what you might call the vast incomprehensibility of nature. I agree with that, because if you look at something under a microscope, I mean, it kind of just becomes even more amazing. And he talks about how it's like scientists discovered atoms, and then there's subatomic particles, and now it's like there's even more small particles in there. And then if you go the other direction and you look into the universe, it's like, there's other galaxies, and there's just more amazing things no matter how far you look into it. And my personal opinion is that we can never in our brains understand the totality of nature. But we have this spiritual component in ourselves, which I've talked about before. And so we are part of all of that. And our lives can be just as beautiful if we accept our proper place on the earth. He says, for human beings, a life of such simplicity would be possible if one worked to produce directly his daily necessities. And that's what I'm trying to get back to is, again, being able to build my own house or fix my own house if something happens to it, and growing my own food, just providing for my basic physical needs. It's creating work, but it's creating meaningful work. And again, it's creating work that the more people who are working together to do that with each other, the more secure we become. And that's real security. If you have a 401k in the stock market, you might think you're secure, but how secure is that? And it's totally out of your control what the stock market does, and that could crash. Or not, it could go up. But we can bring our lives back into our control if we, again, work to produce our daily necessities, a simple life. That's what I'm trying to get back to. He says, if the individual temporarily abandons human will and so allows himself to be guided by nature, nature responds by providing everything. And I agree with that. I think if we work with nature, nature will provide for us in a very beautiful way. We're going to have all the healthy, nutritious food like I was talking about that we deserve, instead of this fake stuff that we're buying at the supermarket. When it is understood that one loses joy and happiness in the attempt to possess them, the essence of natural farming will be realized. The ultimate goal of farming is not the growing of crops, but the cultivation and perfection of human beings. That's just a really beautiful quote that I think can stand on its own. But I will add, I guess, my take on it. When it is understood that one loses joy and happiness in the attempt to possess them, again, if we accept our role and accept that the world is a beautiful place and it will provide for us if we just work with it, we can be happy. But if we're somehow looking for something else during our time here, then that's where the unhappiness comes from. It's like, that's enough, And the ultimate goal of farming is not the growing of crops, but the cultivation and perfection of human beings. I mean, he had to spend 30 years really observing his fields and getting to understand all these insects and the relationship between the bugs eating his plants and the other animals eating those bugs. And it required him to really understand nature and all the complexities of it, and how to come up with a simple system that let all those natural processes happen. And it seemed to really help him grow and understand the world a lot better and reach a sense of peace. And that's what I hope to achieve, just being outside in nature and working with the earth, getting some process going that will help heal the earth. Like I talked about, these aquifers that collapsed in California, like, we can start to recharge the groundwater where we were living. And that's helping to heal the planet, and that's helping to, so I'm reading a book about rainwater harvesting right now, which maybe I'll do another episode about, but Cochise County is very dry. And this rainwater harvesting book, they talked about how forests actually can create rain because they give off moisture and they also give off particles that are required for raindrops to form. And so when we're cutting down forests, it's making the world a less habitable place. I mean, I guess that's obvious, but that's also causing potentially causing it to rain less. So if we start growing things again and recharging the groundwater where we are living, then we're helping to heal the earth, and we're helping to heal ourselves, because we are taking care of the planet, which I think is the rightful role of human beings here. Again, not working in opposition. Right now, on a mass level, we're working against nature, and we're extracting things out of the ground that we think are valuable, that we have given value to as human beings. And but that's not sustainable, and we're destroying our home by doing that. So what a change would it be to start to reverse that process? So I think this is possible, and it's going to make us better human beings. That's what he's saying. The goal of farming is the perfection of human beings, and that's what we have to dig into to get ourselves out of our current predicament, where kind of everything just seems to be getting worse all the time. But that's in our control. If you have a plot of land that you're living on, we can start to do these things that are helping to heal the earth. He says, human life is not sustained by its own power. Nature gives birth to human beings and keeps them alive. This is the relation in which people stand to nature. Food is a gift of heaven. People do not create foods from nature. Heaven bestows them. And he's totally right about that. It kind of made me realize that it's like, no matter how smart we get, we are totally dependent on nature. No matter what advanced technologies we develop, we cannot survive one day we can't survive more than a few minutes without nature, because we have to breathe air, which was provided to us by nature. And the food ultimately comes from nature. So no matter how sophisticated and separated we think we are always totally dependent on nature. And that's just the reality. He also talks later about how we don't know where we came from, and we don't know where we're going. Like, we don't know where we came from before we were born, and we don't know where we're going after we die. And those are pretty basic aspects of life that we probably will never understand. So again, just putting that human knowledge in perspective of what he's saying is how insignificant it is compared to nature. It is kind of just a reality check. I mean, he's saying we need to accept our role in the world and act accordingly. And so yeah, I'm a broken record, but that's what I'm setting out to try to do in my life, at least. He says, if you hit the mark on the wrong target, you have missed. Which I kind of like that saying. Again, like, it is kind of an amazing accomplishment that we have all of these amazing developments and these fertilizers and stuff. Like, it is amazing that human beings were able to develop these products, but we're kind of hitting the mark on the wrong target. We should be questioning why the plants need the fertilizers in the first place. So later he says, there is no one so great as the one who does not try to accomplish anything. Which I kind of like that, because we were raised to want to get promotions and, do all these things with your life, get a bigger and bigger house as you get older and all this stuff. And he's saying, there was no one so great as the one who does not try to accomplish anything. Like, if we just sit still and appreciate nature and observe nature and work with that in a lifestyle that is conducive to that, we will actually be happy, and a lot of these problems will go away. And he says, why do you have to develop? If economic growth rises from 5% to 10%, is happiness going to double? What's wrong with a growth rate of 0%? Isn't this a rather stable kind of economics? Could there be anything better than living simply and taking it easy? I totally agree with that. And we are in this race to always just be producing more and more. And again, it's like, look around you. What has this gotten us? Everyone's working constantly, and everyone is less happy than ever before. So that's the ultimate, most important thing in life, is having happiness and some sort of peace. And maybe we need to give up a lot of our individual ambitions and adopt more of a simple, stable lifestyle. It's worth experimenting with. What other solutions are out there? And if you have one, please let me know. The more people do, the more society develops, the more problems arise. The increasing desolation of nature, the exhaustion of resources, the uneasiness and disintegration of the human spirit, all have been brought about by humanity's trying to accomplish something. Originally, there was no reason to progress and nothing that had to be done. We have come to the point at which there is no other way than to bring about a quote-unquote movement, not to bring anything about. So he's saying we need a movement to not do anything. And again, when he says do nothing farming, he is doing a lot of work. And again, he spent 30 years to develop that, 30 years of observing with nature and experimenting to get that system down to the simplest form possible. And there was still work involved. He had to spread the seeds every year and harvest all the food and stuff. But that's like, once he developed that, I mean, you know, potentially you could just farm that way for hundreds or thousands of years, I guess, and live a happy lifestyle. So why would we want anything else? But we do want other stuff, or we have kind of got this idea that we need something more than that. And I would say that all these problems we're having as a global society are from that idea that we need something more than just the simple lifestyle that nature has provided for us. And I think that going back to that will solve those problems. Right, so here's what I already said. He says, from the first, man does not know where he comes from or where he was going. So it's something to think about. Yeah, he says there is no east or west. I'm also reading one of his other books called Sowing Seeds in the Desert, and he challenges our concept of time. And I guess this idea of east or west, it's like, again, we have imposed a lot of human ideas on the world, but really the world exists outside of our comprehension. So we can label stuff east or west, but he says the sun comes up in the east, sets in the west, but this is merely an astronomical observation. Knowing that you do not understand either east or west is closer to the truth. The fact is, no one knows where the sun comes from. So he's just trying to encourage this deeper understanding of the world. And we can think that we understand the world, but really we don't, and we never can in our brains. We can on more of a intuitive level. So this is why I like the book. It kind of made me think and question my thought patterns. It says, originally human beings had no purpose. The human being was a happy creature, but he created a hard world and now struggles trying to break out of it. And we have created a hard world. We've created a world where we have to work 40 or 50 hours to afford the basic necessities of life. And by him working with nature, he worked less than 1 hour per day. So which would you rather have? What's more important? All these modern conveniences and comforts, or a stable sense of happiness? So I'm pursuing this spiritual happiness. He says, this morning I am washing citrus storage boxes by the river. As I stoop on a flat rock, my hands feel the chill of the autumn river. The red leaves of the sumacs along the riverbank stand out against the clear blue autumn sky. I am struck with wonder by the unexpected splendor of the branches against the sky. Within this casual scene, the entire world of experience is present. So I really just like that anecdote, and he captures just the beauty of a simple moment in nature if you have the presence of mind to stop and appreciate it. Every moment of every day in nature is beautiful in some aspect. And again, this is what we're giving up with our modern lifestyles, is we're just inside all the time and we're never getting that. And if we are outside, it's usually we're just walking from the house to the car in a in a stressed state of mind, running late to get somewhere, and we're walking back to the car from work and just feeling totally drained and stressed out. And this beautiful day and this beautiful nature is happening all around us, and we're just never able to appreciate that. And that's what we're losing with our lifestyle. And that's what we would gain by going back to this more simple lifestyle. And that's a lot, that's all. This beauty is nothing that human beings could ever create. And it's here for us to appreciate and enjoy. And we are given all these free gifts and we're just not taking advantage of them right now. His conclusion, he says, I have demonstrated in my fields that natural farming produces harvests comparable to those of modern scientific agriculture. If the results of a non-active agriculture are comparable to those of science at a fraction of the investment in labor and resources, then where is the benefit of scientific technology? And that's my question to you all, which is why? What is the point of all this? We're running around like crazy people all day, and for what? And we could be accomplishing the same thing with less and be doing it in nature where we belong, in a beautiful world, and being in a beautiful mindset and seeing that beauty in ourselves and in each other and experiencing that on a daily basis. That is a real reality that Masanobu Fukuoka accomplished by going back to nature and living a simple lifestyle. And that's what I want to experience. And that's why I am attempting to do the same thing. So I'll keep you all posted on my efforts to do that. As always, I appreciate your feedback on this, critiques or things that you found interesting. And we have the subreddit, which I will link to in the podcast description for any of your feedback. Or you can leave feedback on YouTube or even Spotify. I think you can leave comments now. So thanks for listening. I don't know when the next episode will be coming. I do want to get the videos going again. If and when I start building my own house, I think that would be really cool to videotape and keep you posted on the progress. And this is all an effort to get everyone excited or understanding why I'm doing this. It's more than just growing food. It's like he said, it's kind of this, how he says, the perfection of human beings and the perfection of our society, and we can just do a lot better than we are right now. And so I need you all to be involved in this. I need someone to be involved in this. I know you all live all over the country and stuff, and so not everyone will be able to participate, but whoever is able to make it, I think it'll be a really beautiful experience, and I hope to communicate the results of that through this podcast and through just talking to you outside of this. So that's it for the show, and I will be talking to you, I don't know when, but sometime in the next few months probably. So, all right, take care.